the best of money matters. Under the radar.
You're listening to Money FM 89.3, and it's now time for Under the Radar with me, Chua Tian Tian. Now, it's a deep dive into the private equity landscape as we speak to an investment firm that's indirectly owned by Temasek Holdings. Set up in 2015, our guest, Azalea Investment Management, defines itself as being in the business of PE investments, with a focus on the development and innovation of new investment platforms and products. The firm said its goal is to bring private assets to a wider investor base through a phased approach, while educating the investing public at the same time. Now, Azalea Investment Management achieves this through two investment programs or platforms, namely the Altrium program as well as the Astrea Platform. Now, under the Altrium program, accredited investors can co-invest with Azalea and access strong-performing private equity fund managers globally, but with lower barriers to entry. Now, the Astrea Platform, on the other hand, is a series of investment products developed based on diversified portfolios of PE funds. Now, the platform is set to target long-term-minded investors, including Singapore retail investors looking to co-invest in private equity with the asset managers. But why are we speaking to Azalea Investment Management, you might ask? Well, the firm had closed a number of funds of late. In July 2024, the firm's Astrea 8 PE bonds closed 2.8 times subscribed at over 1 billion Sing dollars, with bonds distributed to diversified investors across institutions such as endowments, pensions, and insurance companies, as well as accredited investors. Now, more recently, it had in October closed two funds at over 480 million US dollars as a whole, higher than the 400 million US dollars target for both funds combined. But how does the firm assess the outlook for private markets in 2025, and really what is next for its product lineup? Well, lots of questions, as you can imagine, and joining me here in the studio is Chu En Yao, Chief Investment Officer at Azalea Investment Management. En Yao, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you on board with us. And En Yao, we've briefly talked about Azalea Investment Management as this investment company directly owned by Temasek. But let's hear from you. How would you describe Azalea Investment Management's value proposition and business model? What is your positioning strategy? How far is the quote-unquote Temasek effect your competitive advantage?
Yeah, sure. I think maybe taking a step back, Azalea was set up in 2015. But Temasek has been investing in private equity as an asset class for more than 30 years. And with that experience, they have been able to generate good returns from private equity. They have been able to access great managers that are able to deliver top-performing funds for its investors. And with that as a backdrop, when Temasek set us up in 2015, the idea is to see how Azalea can bring this connection to the investors. And from that network, because of the strong relationship that has been established over the years, we are able to access managers that are top performing and are hard to access. And that is the value proposition that we bring to the table.
Okay. Well, En Yao, let's take a look at your product verticals. Azalea Investment Management achieves your goal through two investment platforms or programs, so to speak. You have the Altrium program. You also have the Astrea Platform. So could you take us through the two verticals and their investment mandates? How different are the two in terms of products, time horizon, returns of investment, and ultimately, which is the most important platform for you when it boils down to your balance sheet?
Sure. I think it's very important to recognize that as of today, under the current regulations, we are not able to distribute PE products to the retail investors, right? So when we were set up in 2015, we were thinking to ourselves, how do we bridge the gap that retail investors have in accessing this asset class? And that's how we came out with the idea that if you have a very high quality portfolio of PE funds and you can put bonds upon it, retail investors, they lack the investment opportunities into even the retail bonds. And that's how we came out with a private equity bond product, where today is now a very established program. We have launched Astrea 4 for retail investors in 2018. And at that point in time, they can only access the Sing dollar tranche.
Yeah.
And if I fast forward to Astrea 7, they are now able to access the US dollar tranche as well. So over the years, we have made it available for retail investors in Singapore, not just to access the Sing dollar tranche, but the US dollar tranche, giving them more investment optionality. And throughout that whole process, the idea that we have is that private equity is a very illiquid asset class.
Yeah.
How to make it suitable for retail investors? What if they need to have liquidity during the holding period? And that's where we put in a bond that is investment grade rated. It has about 5 to 6 years of tenure. And at the end of the 5 to 6 years, they get repaid in full. And like what you mentioned earlier, our bonds are usually very oversubscribed. But it is also important to point out that the interest rate that we set for these bonds are actually set by the institutional investors. So for each of our program, the institutional investors like the insurance, like the endowment, like the corporates, they set the pricing for which we then offer the same pricing to the retail investors.
Okay. So that's under your Astrea program. Could you share a bit more about your Altrium program as well?
Yes. So after we launched 2 series of Astrea program, Astrea 4 and 5, if you recall at the point in time in 2019, the interest rate was actually very low.
Yeah.
And the same group of investors, they were like, could you give us something more exciting? You know, the interest rate at 3% is really...
The retail investors or the institutional ones?
The accredited investors.
Okay.
So part of our mission is to allow first-time institution as well as accredited individuals to be able to gain access to this asset class.
Yes.
Now, if you recall at the start of the conversation, I mentioned that under the current regulations, individuals are not able to invest in PE unless they are accredited. Yes, that's right. So our Altrium program was born out of the necessity to provide not just a fixed return coupon to the investors. They wanted something more.
Yeah.
They wanted to get the equity returns, and we are able to design a product that is for accredited individuals as well as institutions. And from the same thinking behind making Astrea bonds accessible, we have also put in very friendly investor features that addresses some of the pain points that even institutional investors don't like. So for example, typical PE funds, they take 12 to 15 years for the entire investment holding period. Our product, we have a fixed life of 10 years. Right? Typical investors, they don't like the J-curve that comes with this asset class. What we have done is we have, through blending primaries with secondary transaction, we minimize the J-curve for investors. And last but not least, individuals or institutional investors, they don't like having multiple capital calls and it's very draining on the middle office. What we have done is we have make it very, very simple. We only call capital for the first 4 to 5 years.
Okay, so it's staggered in terms of the returns as well.
Yes. So the returns that we are, of course, hoping to generate for our investors will hopefully be in the teens. Yeah.
Okay. Now, earlier we talked a bit more about accredited investors, and I want to bring this question up, right? When we talk about investors under your 2 platform, Altrium and Astrea, who are the investors there? And what is the hurdle rate they're looking at? And also you talked about how institutional investors, they are the ones setting the rate for your bonds. Who fits in where in the puzzle, so to speak?
So when we were designing all the different product roadmap at Azalea, we came up with a risk-reward spectrum. Right?
Okay.
So if you think about the Astrea program, these are fixed return instruments, right? So these are for investors who have a lower risk preferences, who wants a regular income, and they will go for the investment grade rated bonds.
Yeah.
But for investors who are of higher risk, higher return, they can select our Altrium flagship program, where we provide them access to very high quality of PE managers primarily in the buyout space. And historical data has shown that buyout managers are able to generate pretty consistent return. And what we hope to achieve for the investors in our Altrium flagship program is probably an IRR of between 12 to 15% net to investors, whereas for the bonds, it's typically between 4 to 6%.
Okay. A quick one over here. When it comes down to the most important program for you, when it boils down to Azalea's balance sheet, which one would that be?
So I don't think we think about our own balance sheet in these terms.
Yeah.
The way we think about our balance sheet is we want to deploy our balance sheet into products that generate good returns, but into the same program as our investors, meaning that our interests are all aligned and we all have the same outcome that we want to achieve. So in terms of both the program, obviously the Altrium program generate a higher return.
Returns. Yes.
That's great for my balance sheet, right? For the Astrea program is a bond product that we are creating. We are usually the equity holder behind the bond program, and they both have equal or the same emphasis that we have because both serve different objectives. You can think of the Astrea program as one that we are able to reach out to the man in the street.
Okay.
Right. Whereas for the Altrium program, unfortunately at this juncture, is still limited to the accredited investors.
Okay, they serve different purpose to the firm strategically. But of course, when we look at returns, the higher risk one would have higher returns for you. The one where you have to offer a fixed rate return to your investors, obviously you have to be more cautious with that as well.
That's right.
Yeah. And that leads me to my next question, which is who exactly do you invest in? Because some of your investee firms under one of your programs include a tech business management solution provider, Apito. You have semicon manufacturing systems maker, Kokusai Electric. You have even Swiss luxury watchmaker, Bridlin. Tell us more. You talked about being the equity holder. So do you invest in funds that invest in these companies or do you invest in them directly? How does it work?
Yeah. So I think it boils down to what program are we talking about?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about the Astrea program and the Altrium flagship program that we are talking about, these are all invested in the funds where the funds then invest directly into the companies. We do have a separate program called the Altrium Co-Investment Fund. This fund will invest directly into these companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Now, let's talk more about your geographical and sectoral exposure of your products, investment products. How would you describe the exposure? That's number one. Number two is how nimble can the firm be in adjusting that exposure in relation to private market conditions?
Right. So maybe let me just take a step back and see where the returns are, where the geographies are. Historically, the private equity market is the most developed in US and Europe. And for Asia, it's still developing. And most of the Asia funds, they are still in the first generation of founders. So if you look at the length and depth of the market, the US and the European markets have been the deepest and have the longest track record and have generated the best returns so far, right? Asia is still young, still nascent, has a lot of potential, but unfortunately, it doesn't have that length of the track record that we are talking about. So when we were designing our program and constructing the portfolio, about 80 to 90% of our funds are from funds in US and Europe, and up to 10 to 15% is in Asia. And that is the way that we have been constructing our portfolio. For funds that are in the Altrium program, a lot of the investors actually came from Asia. So we took the position that if these investors are located in Asia, they are able to access these investment opportunities themselves. Right? So which is why we are trying to create a bridge whereby we can help these investors in Asia access the top performing funds in US and Europe.
We talked about private equity being an illiquid form of asset, so to speak, right? How nimble can you be in adjusting your portfolio and exposure depending on the state of markets.
Right. This is like a marriage, right? Once you commit to a fund, usually you are committed to them for at least 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I'm
right?
sure.
Yeah. So
And that's the J curve as you talked about.
That's right.
And
So they will take the first 4 or 5 years to build out their portfolio. So once you have decided that this is a great manager, I believe in this manager, you stick with them for the first 4 to 5 years. So you can't be like a public market investors to switch in and out of the industry that you like. I don't like tech. I decided to switch out to something else in industrial. No, you can't do that. So when we commit the money to the funds, we trust the manager to be able to deploy the money in a responsible manner.
Okay.
And over 3 to 4 years, that creates that vintage diversification. And then they will pick the right companies that have the best value that fits into the strategy that they are pursuing. So in terms of industry sector, classification and all that, is actually an output of what the managers invest in.
Okay. Now let's take a look at where things are at for Azalea Investment Management right now, Anyao, because January 2025, that's when the firm celebrates its 10th birthday. And based on your FY 2023, I believe was it annual report under one of the funds, the firm has to date assets under management of about $9 billion US. What numbers are we looking at this point in time? How would you assess the firm's financial performance thus far?
I think we have been very fortunate that we have a very supportive parent that allows us to create products for the investor base. We project that by end of 2024, based on unaudited numbers, we are probably about 11 billion of AUM.
Okay. Now let's take a look at some recent developments surrounding the company. And now in July 2024, Azalea Investment Management's Astrea 8 PE bonds closed 2.8 times subscribed. We're looking at over 1 billion Sing dollars. Bonds are distributed to diversified investors, institutions such as endowments, pension, insurance companies, and you've got accredited investors as well. Then October 2024, you closed 2 funds at over $480 million US as a whole, higher than the target of $400 million USD. How would you assess investors' reception thus far, and how far can that optimism be sustained going into 2025?
Right. I think if we put all these numbers into perspective, the Astrea Platform is a regular program for us. We do intend to come to the market every 12 to 18 months if market conditions permit. So that program at a steady state is usually about 1 to 1.5 billion in NAV, and the bonds is probably about 500 to 600 million.
Okay.
Right? So these will be the regular staple product that we hope to be able to offer to even the retail investors in Singapore. Like what you say, it has a broad spectrum of institutional investors as well. And for the other 2 products that you mentioned, this is part of our ongoing product development, whereby we want to give investors more optionality to be able to create their own PE program. So our flagship program I mentioned earlier give you a return of maybe 12 to 15% return for investors. This is what we call the staple, right? This is what we call the foundation program that if you as an individual, if you want to build your access to private equity or to private assets, build your core portfolio around a stable portfolio that gives you consistent returns. But if you want something more exciting, if you decided to invest behind the AI trend, you want to have access to the top performing venture strategies, then our growth strategy will be suitable for you. But if you want something that is higher risk, higher return, but directly into a more concentrated of individual portfolio companies, then our co-investment fund will be more suitable for you. Okay. So that is the mindset that we have in mind in coming up with different products that allows even our individual investors to be able to curate a PE program for themselves.
Okay. Now, if you're just tuning in, we're now in conversation with Chu Enyao, Chief Investment Officer at Azalea Investment Management. Well, Enyao, let's talk more about 2025. In 2023, I recall private markets took a hit due to macroeconomic headwinds, which resulted in what some would say a funding winter, but some would say it's not a funding winter because it filters out all the companies that are not doing well. So either way, when we look at 2024, it's a good year for equities, but one with a lot of geopolitical uncertainties as well. Heading into 2025, with global interest rate tipped to come down in a measured manner under the Trump administration, of course, what do you think the year will look like for Azalea Investment Management?
I think it will continue to be interesting and exciting. So what is fascinating about this market is you can't predict it and you just have to watch it closely, right? So I think under the Trump administration, the geopolitical tension, the tariffs, I don't think it's going to stop, right? I think this will continue to play out. You have a lot of incentive for companies to start insourcing, to build factories in U.S. Again, that might play out to different sectors, right? And you have geopolitical tension that may cause the supply chain to be affected, right? People are not buying from China. So you have a lot of different issues. Now, that is where I believe our program stands to benefit because we are very, very diversified across all these regions. So we have all the U.S. funds. Potentially, they are going to benefit from a better economy, better business outlook. A lot of M&A activities, hopefully with the IPO market coming back to life, you have more exits. And you can see that the S&P is at record levels.
Yeah.
Is it going to sustain? Nobody knows. So we can just hope that it benefits our funds that have a lot of investments in these regions.
Yeah. So entering into 2025, I know you briefly talked about that earlier, but just for more granularity, right? What can we expect from Azalea Investment Management in terms of your investment priorities and also your product pipeline? Right.
I think the mindset and the philosophy that Azalea has is that we want all our investors to think long term, right? Don't treat this asset class as something that you can time the market, you can buy when you like it, sell when you don't like it. It's more like behaving like how the sovereign wealth funds do it, behaving like how the endowment do it, consistently deploying, don't time the vintage. And at the end of the day, you will have the vintage diversification. You will be able to generate the returns that the asset class is enjoying. So with that in mind, we launched our first Altrium flagship in 2019. We launched the second one in 2021. And in 2025, we hope to come back to the market again so that our investors, they are able to invest regularly into this asset class and create a program like how the endowment and how the sovereign wealth fund do it.
Okay. Now, looking ahead, Enyao, if we go by consulting firm EY, it came up with 6 emerging trends that will continue to influence private equity landscape in 2025. Now, they include new themes like sovereign wealth funds, expansion into new markets, change management, as well as the returning trends of AI, infrastructure, and growth. Now, Enyao, you are in the PE landscape, and we would like to hear from you. What are some trends that you are keeping your eyes on at Azalea Investment Management? How would that influence the business decisions that you make at the firm?
Right. And obviously, I think the AI trend has been going on for quite a while now. First, of course, it benefited the semiconductor, and a lot of companies is trying to see how they can use large language model to improve their business processes and all that. So I think there will be a lot of companies who are able to benefit from adopting AI, and there will be companies that will be disrupted by this AI phenomenon. So that probably will be one. And I think, of course, the other one is changing consumer pattern, right? We see how Amazon disrupted, the whole online business, how people consume, how people buy things. I think there will be new emerging trends that will come up, right? You can never catch all these different channels of buying and selling. But there will be the very traditional way of doing businesses. You buy a very boring business, it is generating very good cash flows, it is in the staple. And these are businesses that could still be undermanaged. It could be a family-owned business that needs a new change in upgrade in the management executives. These will continue to be in play. So there are different pockets within the private equity sector that will allow the managers to do what they are good at and generate the good returns for investors.
A quick follow-up question that we might have missed out earlier, right? I know you put in your funds with the fund managers, and the fund managers would then invest depending on the different programs that you have. But, how much control do you have over what the fund managers decide to do? Do you have I don't know, in terms of a board seat, veto rights, etc.?
Right. So
or is it a passive approach?
The way that it works in the private equity is usually you do all your diligence before you give them the money, right? So you want to make sure that they are good steward of your money, they can generate the good returns for you. And these managers are usually licensed by the respective jurisdiction, either the SEC or the FSC, or in Singapore it's the MAS. So these are all regulated entities. The other thing that we are very focused on is typically our programs only invest in tried and tested managers. So these are managers that have invested through different cycles. They have generated returns across different economic cycles and all that. And they have a consistent pattern of returning cash to the investors. So these are not your, not a fly-by-night kind of managers that we are backing. And so far, we have been able to deliver the returns for us.
Okay. Now, before we let you go, Anyao, you might have touched on it earlier as well, but to wrap up the conversation, keep us excited. What are some future plans for Azalea Investment Management for 2025? Any teasers for us in the upcoming months?
All right. I mentioned earlier that the Astrea program is a regular program for us. So if market conditions are right, we do hope to launch the next issuance of the Astrea bonds. And of course, in 2025, some of our existing mandates, I mentioned about the Altrium 3 program, that will be coming back to the market again because we have already finished deploying the first 2 funds. And then we have other exciting programs that we are thinking about, such as the second co-investment fund and so forth. So we do have a very exciting pipeline that we have, and hopefully, our investors will continue to back us.
I'm sure I can see your sparkle, the sparkle in your eye already. So lots to look forward to from Azalea Investment Management in the new year. Once again, thanks a lot, Anyao. That was Chu Anyao, Chief Investment Officer at Azalea Investment Management. Thank you so much for joining us on Money FM 89.3.
Thank you, Tian Tian. It's my pleasure.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.